I never thought an evening at a restaurant would open cracks in my marriage wide enough to feel like an earthquake. But it wasn't really about the restaurant or the bill or even her friends. It was about something deeper: respect, loyalty, and the kind of defense I thought a spouse should naturally give. It began on a Friday night, one of those evenings when my wife insisted we go out with her circle of friends. I didn't mind at first. They were loud, sarcastic, the kind of group that thrived on inside jokes that were only funny to them. I always felt like the outsider. I would smile, nod, sip my drink, and wait for the night to pass. This time, though, the teasing came at my expense. Her friend Daniel started it. He smirked and said, "So, how does it feel to be married to someone way out of your league?" The table erupted in laughter. I forced a smile, trying to brush it off. "Pretty good, actually," I said lightly, though the word stung. But then her friend Melissa chimed in. "Honestly, we all thought she'd end up with someone taller, maybe more. I don't know, ambitious." Another round of laughter followed, glasses clinking as if my humiliation was part of the entertainment. I glanced at my wife, waiting for her to step in to say, "Hey, that's enough." But she didn't. She just laughed along, shaking her head like it was all harmless fun. I swallowed my pride, tried to let it slide, but the comments didn't stop. By the time the waiter dropped the check, I was simmering. I leaned toward my wife and muttered, "Do you think this is funny? They're mocking me like that." Her response cut deeper than any of their jokes. She didn't lower her voice, didn't pull me aside, didn't even soften her tone. She just looked at me, annoyed, and said, loud enough for her friends to hear, "If you don't like my friend's jokes, you can just pay and leave." The table went quiet for a second, then someone chuckled, and the laughter picked back up. To them, it was another punchline. To me, it was betrayal. I stared at her, my chest tightening. Pay and leave. Was that what I was to her? A wallet? A spectator? Someone she wouldn't offend, even when the jokes chipped away at my dignity. The waiter came back, and without a word, I pulled out my card, dropped it on the tray, and let him take it. No one spoke to me directly after that. I felt invisible, as though the role I played was simply to cover the bill and vanish. On the drive home, silence filled the car. My hands gripped the wheel while her phone screen lit up with notifications. Her friends texting, no doubt laughing about the night. Finally, I said, "You really told me to just pay and leave?" in front of them. She sighed, like I was being difficult. They were joking. "You're too sensitive. Why do you let words get under your skin? You make things awkward when you can't take a joke." I shook my head. "It's not about the joke. It's about you. You didn't have my back. You laughed at me with them. Do you even realize how that feels?" Her silence told me everything I needed to know. That night, I slept on the couch, not because she asked me to, but because I couldn't bear lying next to someone who thought my dignity was disposable. Over the next few days, I thought about what her words meant. Pay and leave. That phrase played in my head like a broken record. It wasn't just about dinner. It was a reflection of how she saw me, useful until inconvenient, valuable until I asked for respect. When I finally confronted her again, I asked, "If your friends mean more to you than defending me, what's the point of us? What happens the next time? Am I just supposed to sit there and be their punchline forever?" She looked at me, frustration in her eyes, but not regret. "You're making this bigger than it is. They're my friends. They've been with me through everything. If you can't handle them, maybe you don't belong there." And there it was, the truth I had been afraid to face. It wasn't about one dinner. It was about priorities. In that moment, I realized she didn't see me as her partner in the way I saw her as mine. I thought marriage meant standing beside each other, especially when others tried to tear you down. I thought it meant loyalty, defense, even in small moments like an awkward dinner table joke. But to her, it seemed marriage meant blending me into her world, even if it meant blending away my self-respect. I didn't leave that night, but something inside me shifted. The love was still there, but it was bruised, limping. And every time I remembered her words, that bruise deepened. Because no matter what happened afterward, no apology, no explanation, I knew I'd never forget the night my wife told me, with a laugh in her voice and her friend's eyes on me, If you don't like my friend's jokes, you can just pay and leave. I stayed longer than I should have. Part of me kept hoping she'd wake up one morning, look at me, and realize what her words had done. That she'd understand it wasn't about thin-skinned pride. It was about respect. But weeks passed, and every dinner with her friends felt like walking into a boxing ring, where I was a guaranteed loser. She laughed at their digs, rolled her eyes at my silence, and when I finally refused to go, she accused me of being controlling. One night, as we sat across from each other in our quiet kitchen, I asked a question that had been haunting me since that restaurant. When they made me the joke, "Why didn't you defend me?" She didn't hesitate, because I didn't think it was a big deal. And honestly, if you can't handle a little teasing, maybe you're not as strong as I thought. That was it, the confirmation. She didn't see me as her partner. She saw me as someone to tolerate, not someone to protect. I stood up, took a slow breath, and said the words I've been holding back. Then maybe you should stay with people who think I'm a joke, because I'm done being one. Her eyes widened, but she didn't reach for me. She didn't protest. Maybe she didn't believe me. Maybe she thought I'd cool down and crawl back like always. But I didn't. I packed a bag that night, walked out of the house, and for the first time in years, I felt lighter. Sad, yes. Broken, absolutely. But lighter. Because when the person who promised to stand aside you chooses laughter at your expense instead, there's no marriage left to save. And as I drove away, one thought echoed in my mind. Her words, the ones that had cracked everything open. If you don't like my friend's jokes, you can just pay and leave. So I finally did.